Welcome to What the World Needs Now, sponsored by Harmony Academy from National University. In this episode, hosts Tom Whisinnand and Josh Monroe speak with Ms. Allison Robb, a two-time Teacher of the Year and current Dean of Academics at Sonoran Science Academy. Allie shares her journey into education, emphasizing the importance of curiosity and empathy in teaching, concluding with her thoughts on what the world needs now.
Welcome back to What the World Needs Now, where teachers talk real life, real classrooms, and the moments that make it all worth it. Today, we're honored to sit down with someone who's not just shaped students' lives, but she's been recognized twice as Teacher of the Year. But if you ask her, that's not her greatest achievement. Allie, thank you so much for joining us tonight. For those that are listening that don't have the privilege of knowing who you are, can you give us a little bit of an elevator pitch? Who are you? Where are you from? And what's your role in education?
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here. So, I am currently the Dean of Academics at Sonoran Science Academy in Tucson, Arizona. I've been in education for about 10 years now, and I started actually in the special education realm. So, that was kind of my background before moving into leadership. Definitely where my heart's at. But both of my parents were actually in K-12 education, and so there's those family roots too. So that brought me to where I am now. But I am currently living here with my husband Matt and my daughter Layton, who are my daily inspiration and my personal wise.
Allie, it seems like sometimes education, teaching does run in a family. I'm curious. My mom was a teacher for years in the special ed world. My dad was an educator. When I told my dad that I wanted to be an educator, he thought I was nuts. He wasn't behind this change of major that I made from pre-occupational therapy into education. I'm just curious, both education parents, what was your road into education? When did you decide and how did they support you or not?
Yeah, so I think maybe at the beginning they didn't necessarily want me to follow in their footsteps. Education is it's definitely not an area that you're going to get rich by any means. And so they definitely had that in the back of their minds. But my mom was a special education teacher for about 20 years. She then taught first grade for the end of her career. And so I just firsthand saw the impact that she had with students that were friends of mine. It was while I was going to school too. And then my dad, he was actually an athletic director, a coach, and a bus driver. And so he had the definite opposite lens that my mom had, where you have those unruly kids before and after school. But he loved it. And so I think both of them, when I told them this is what I want to do with my career too, I think they were a little humbled, but they were definitely excited for me that was going to be the trajectory of my life too.
That's awesome. And what a man of many tools there, your dad, bus driving, athletic director. He had a lot going on.
Yeah.
And I had a friend, a teammate, and her daughter wanted to go into teaching when she was entering high school. And we're lucky enough in our district where we've got an academy that students who are interested in different fields have the opportunity to explore them before going to college. And she had to have the talk with her about the financial side of being a teacher. It's a hard reality that we have to grapple with. Like, I love what I do. I would never want to do anything else. And I think about sitting at a cubicle, how crazy I would be. I mean, I'd be one of those people that just hated their lives, but I love mine for what I get to do. But man, it's difficult that we have to grapple and toss and turn with the financial side of it. Allie,
Absolutely.
you have been named Teacher of the Year, not once, but twice. Congratulations on that. And my question is, what do you think sets your approach apart?
That's a good question. I think sometimes it's easy to forget our inspiration and why we're at where we are. And I volunteered for a crisis center when I was in high school, and that's actually what started to pay my way through college. And I got to see kids at all different parts of their life, different times of their life. And I think that during that time, I realized that I needed to always center myself on kids and always center myself on why I chose to do what I do. And I think sometimes it can feel like checklists. Sometimes it can feel like compliance, like you're just trying to meet that mark. And so I just would always center myself back on why I chose this career. And not saying that teachers don't do that. I think a lot of teachers do, and maybe it goes unnoticed. at the end of every single day, what grounds me is I write down 3 things that were good that happened that day. And I had to start doing that when I started this career, because if I didn't leave the day with those 3 great things that happened, then I would start the day on a negative note, and I just couldn't have that. And so centering myself on what's most important and always remembering back to those kids at the crisis center, like that wasn't the life that I had. And being able to help them through that was something that was life changing. So I think the experiences that I've had definitely helped me get to that point in my life.
One thing that you said in the questionnaire we had you fill out before you were on here was it wasn't that getting the two-time teacher of the year thing was not great. It was great, but the best achievement was watching kids step into their own greatness. And I find that so refreshing. And in my own classroom, I really try and strive to get kids to realize that they are amazing, they're marvelous, they're wonderful human beings. And I say that to them, I try to breathe that reality into their lives. How do you do that? Like, are there concrete ways? Are there programs? How do you get kids at your level, one, when you were in the classroom, to step into their greatness? And now that you're out of the classroom, more in an administrator role, as a system wide, I guess, way to get kids to step into their best selves.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, as a teacher, my lens and my scope was so small, but every single group that I had, especially in special education, because you're pulling out, 3 to 5 kids at a time. And so it would be starting over every single time I had them within a day, let alone starting over the next day. And so I just always had faith in what they could accomplish. We set a lot of goals. And I know that that may sound cliche, but especially with students who really struggle and they do have disabilities, we had to set goals for what that next day was going to look like, or what we were going to achieve by the end of the week together. So I think seeing those achievements in real time helped. And then as an administrator, again, I start small. It's the greetings in the morning. I am always outside every single morning. Hugging, that's my thing. So every morning I'm hugging every single kid that walks on campus. And if I miss it that day, it's really hard for me. So that's what gets my day started and fills my cup. And those constant check-ins and making sure that students feel seen, that they feel safe, that when they walk onto campus, they have a place that they know that they belong. And then I think also creating opportunities for student voice is so important. Building those leadership roles. So at our school, we actually have AVID council. And so it's student leaders on campus that follow, all of the AVID guidelines and what they should be doing to be a model student. We host science fairs. We have Eagles of the Month. So just allowing students to step into their leadership roles and really take pride in what they're doing on campus.
That's awesome. You talked about making sure that students can feel seen and heard. And I think that oftentimes we skip over that part of just making sure that they're greeted in the morning. Like, I got emails to do. I've got this. I got to make copies. I've got all. But if we can just pause for a second and just, even as you're walking down the hall to go make copies, giving high fives and saying good morning, giving hugs, anything to let every kid know how awesome it is to see them takes them so much farther in that relationship building, even if you don't have them, right? Like, even if they're not in your class yet, eventually they'll get to you and they'll want to be around you because of the way that you've made them feel. I'm curious, with the role that you're in, I have to imagine that you deal with some behavior issues as they arise. I'm curious how you build those relationships with students who might be resistant to you or closed off, who maybe see school as not their thing, not their place. What have you learned about earning reluctant students' trust?
I think, again, going back to that crisis center when I was so young, and also, I've lived life too, and I had my experiences from when I was younger. And I think being able to connect with kids and relate to them. So not necessarily always sharing exactly what I've experienced in my life, but I do try to reason with them, and I try to level with them and let them know that I understand where they came from, and that I can also share some of those experiences at obviously an age appropriate way. But I do think that communicating with their parents, communicating with their teachers, and not just about the negative. And I think sometimes it's easy as an educator to always reach out when a student is misbehaving. But if we can really try to make it a point to reach out to parents and teachers, right, general education teachers, about the great things that their child is doing, so that then if we do need help with some of those behaviors, it's a lot easier to reach out and get their buy-in at that point and their support. But I also think that going back to those leadership roles, if you give students, especially those who struggle with behavior, a chance to lead in their school and a chance to have a voice with their peers. So whether that be buddies or, grade levels. So if we have fifth graders who are reading to our kindergarten students, we also sometimes with PBIS at our campus, we do check-in, check-out opportunities, and we don't necessarily have enough adult coaches. And so sometimes I think there's power in having student leaders who can check in and check out with those students who are younger, who are also struggling with behavior.
I think that's so true. The more you empower students, the more they really own where they are. That's true with academics. I think that's true with the social and emotional well-being of students. And you really find out that these students who may be reluctant to have a relationship with some adults really have some of the biggest hearts for some of the younger kids. They really understand what it is to care, even if they have this really gruff, like tough exterior, you know? Allie, can we back up for a little bit? You mentioned, what was it, an AVID program? And I'm not familiar with that. Will you
Yes.
help me learn along with some others who may not know what AVID is? Walk us through that.
Absolutely. So AVID stands for Advancement via Individual Determination. There's a lot of big words there, but it's actually amazing because our kindergarten through fifth grade students on our campus, my daughter is actually an AVID ambassador, and she has that memorized. And
I love
so,
it.
but when you ask them what that means too, it's advancing or moving up with your own determination and what that means as an individual. And if you put the work in, what you get out of that. And so we are on our way to becoming an AVID school. We've done a lot of AVID showcases where we've gone to other schools and just observed the power in those leadership roles. And so on our campus, one of our teachers and I are really kind of pushing that in a way that our students grab onto it. Every morning in the announcements, we talk about it. We have 16 AVID ambassadors on our campus. And so they help with parent tours. So if I'm doing a parent tour and as an administrator, they come out, they answer any questions that parents have about the school, and they talk to the students that might be there with parents. So they're really overcoming a lot of those fears and also building confidence. That self-confidence is so important. But they're also helping with assemblies. They're talking about the different things that can help them advance as individuals. And so a big piece of AVID is WICR, which stands for, there's a bunch of acronyms.
So many acronyms. I think that's true all
That's
across education,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. So WICR is writing and inquiry, collaboration, organization, and reading. And so how we incorporate that into our everyday lessons, but also how students can really stand behind that. And so if you go into any of our classrooms on our campus, our students would be able to tell you how they're staying organized, whether that be by their AVID binder or their planners or, taking notes that day. We really focus on Cornell notes. So our students from kindergarten all the way to fifth grade, they are AVID trained and they know what it means to be an AVID student.
I'm Tom, I'm with you. I had no idea what AVID stood for, but as listening, it really reminds me of Leader and Me, which is by Stephen Covey. And it's just about creating leaders for our society starting at a very young age, and the power that we can give them when we share space with them instead of making them feel like we have all of the control. For somebody who's not familiar with AVID or even Leader and Me, do you have any books or resources that you would turn us towards to start creating leaders in our own classrooms?
Yeah, so if you look at the AVID website, I mean, they have a plethora of different books and resources that you can use. Because at Sonoran Science Academy, we are a STEM school and a STEM organization. So the great thing about AVID too is that it has STEM connections. And so teachers can use those connections in their classroom to not only build science, technology, engineering, and math, but also to really cultivate a lifelong learner and a student who can think critically in a world where sometimes it can be hard to do that. So I think definitely looking at the AVID website, which is just AVID, but also Todd Whitaker is another person that I've learned a lot from. And so reading some of his books, and he actually did some professional developments for our teachers on our campus. And so just hearing straight from him, that was amazing. So people who really get behind student leaders and build that up in schools, I think is incredible.
It is absolutely incredible. And to be able to hear Todd Whitaker speak is absolutely amazing. Totally motivational, totally like everything is applicable, everything is relatable. Allie, your passion just comes through in spades when we're talking to you. Your love for children, your love for education. Sometimes it's tough though, right? Like, not every day is going to be awesome. And we can write down the 3 positive things and we can go in and we breathe that heavy breath. Oh, has there ever been a time where it's like you are overwhelmed, you feel beat down, you feel defeated, and then how do you overcome that as an educator, right? As an administrator, I would imagine that you have to be that rock for a lot of people in a lot of different ways. So, how do you get yourself out of that place?
I really appreciate that question because I think hard seasons are normal and I don't think that people talk about it enough. I think when I was a teacher, especially in special education, and I was the only one on our campus, it was easy to feel like I was on an island and like I didn't have a lot of other people to lean on. As I grew, especially into administration, I realized that part of leaning on other people is on me. And I need to be able to, as an educator and as an individual, reach out to the people that can support me and that I can have conversations and feel comfortable talking to. So, yeah, I think it's important to lean on colleagues, students, families, the community, because we're all in this together. And it is definitely not something that is easy. And I don't think it ever is going to be. And it definitely never has been. And so realizing that we don't have to carry it alone. And I have a lot of very real conversations, even just with my teachers now, and just about, yeah, some days are really hard for me. And this is what I did for myself. This is what I might need from you. And even just realizing that we can ask for help from other people. It's hard and it doesn't feel good to have to feel defeat or admit that. But I think there's so many people around that also like to see that we're human, especially in administration. And I try to be present and I try to be available. But yeah, days are hard sometimes. Now, when I'm at school, do I ever show that on my face? I would love to say no, and I try hard not to. But when I get home, I also have to lean on my family, my parents who've been there, my husband, my daughter, and just let them know, like, yeah, today was rough and tomorrow I'm going to start over again. And I really do have that philosophy because if I didn't, I don't know what I would do. So I have to have the philosophy that every single day is a new day. We all know too that there's a lot of parents who can get unhappy with the decisions that you make today. I think there were
Mhm.
2 or 3 that were unhappy just today.
Right?
So, I can try to bridge that relationship and make it better, but just recognizing that I have to start over again tomorrow.
Allie, I have to say one more thing. What you just said, I think, is pure gold because sometimes as educators or as just humans in general, we do get into that pit of sorrow and we stay there and we live there and we dwell there and we forget that it is on us too to reach our hand up for help. And we cannot allow ourselves to be there day in and day out. We have to take some ownership of our emotional and social and physical well being. It is on us to reach out and to be vulnerable with each other and to tell each other what we need. So kudos to you for doing that. I just think that is something that's, again, not talked enough about. We should not be in silos. We should not do this work alone. It's a lot easier when you have your friends with you.
And you're right that it's hard to ask for help. I mean, we have those talks in 5th grade nonstop. Like, it is okay to ask for help. And then you have to model it for them, right? We have to model to our students, here's ways that I ask for help when I need it, so that we humanize what we're doing with our students. Al, you also have a different lens than Tom and I. Like, you're on the administration side of things. And so as you're talking about grown-ups getting upset with maybe decisions a teacher has made, or maybe decisions that you have made, what are ways that you are able to handle that? And then what are some ways that teachers know you got their back? Like, so that they know, hey, Allie's with me. She's supporting our staff and our teachers in the best way, and she's also still doing what's best for kids.
Yeah. I will never, ever forget what it felt like or what it feels like to be a teacher. I think even in administration, we also have to recognize we're still teachers. It may not be necessarily standing in front of a classroom in the same way, but we're still teachers. And so I can't forget what that feels like to have a classroom full of 25 students. And even today, I have a lot of our teachers that come to me, especially when they feel like they have gone through every outlet that they can. And so it is hot in Arizona right now. I'm going to tell you that right. It is hot. And so I even had teachers reaching out today about their air conditioner, and they're trying to get to the bottom of getting that fixed. And it's so hot with 25 little bodies. And so just letting them know I will take care of this. And I think I've built the trust and the relationship with all of the staff on our campus that they know that I will. Um, and I think I let my actions speak for themselves. And that's going to be something that always is important for me as an administrator, that I will follow through. I am not a person who is just going to say, yeah, we're going to get this done. If I don't get it done, then that's on me. And so that's something that's really important to me, showing teachers that I will stand behind my actions and I will make sure that I do whatever I can to support them. And that includes being around campus. And I know I already said being present, but it is very important for me to be in the classrooms, providing feedback, messaging the teachers, leaving them notes, letting them know areas that I thought were fantastic. And then instead of just talking about areas that they can grow, I always work with them on that. What is something that you feel like could have gone better with this lesson? Because that's all theirs and they can own that lesson. And I have the opportunity to see some of the best teachers and some of the best educators. And I just feel so grateful for that. So I think for me, it is standing behind my words and letting that action show through.
People are going to resonate with that. They're going to sit with it and be like, that is what good administrators do. One of the things that I love most about my principal is that she's always in classrooms. Like, that's, to me, when I look at her, I'm like, I know you have our back because you're with us all day. You know what the kids are like. It's not like, hey, Timmy had to go to your office and you have no idea who Timmy is. No, you're with us in the classrooms. You're living this with us. And her role, like I said, your lens is totally different. I could never do the administrative side. But she's sitting there writing her emails, or she's sitting there doing other things, not even really always paying attention to what other teachers are doing, but she's present, right? And so I think back to what makes a great teacher to me. It was my teachers that were there for me and knew they cared about me. And I know that about her because she's there.
Allie, gosh, we just had an amazing in-service at the district Josh and I are in, and it was my school, at least, was all about data and using data and implementing systems to use data to better direct instruction towards children. So if you have an educator that doesn't see the value in systems or how to utilize data or data to inform instruction through a system, what would you say to that educator, and how would you get them to see the value in the system use?
Yeah, I think that data speaks for itself. And when you can project, so we actually did the same thing at our school where we split our teachers into groups and actually had them all look at data from a different lens. So they didn't even look at their own data. We had like 10 different groups, and it was iReady diagnostic. It was the AASA, the Arizona State Assessment data. It was our letter grades, the science, all these different data points. And so we had teachers looking at it some that were in language arts, and they're like, what is this math? I don't understand what this means. And so making sure that we're able to explain it. I think that everybody needs to be able to see, when we're talking different domains in math and we're talking numbers and operations, what does that mean? What are we looking at? Where can our students perform in this domain? And so being able to understand percentages, being able to understand lexiles for ELA reading, being able to understand where all these data points are coming from and then portray that in a way that teachers can understand, but then also where they can work together on it, and not always necessarily through rose-colored glasses. Because especially if I'm a math teacher and I'm looking at the math data and I see, that there were any areas where we struggled as a school, I may not want to take ownership for that, or, I may kind of talk my way out of why it looks the way that it does. And so having other people look at that and just being able to see all of the different things that we can get from assessments like common formative assessments, or even just being able to look at the grade book and understand where our students are falling if we're grading them based on standard-based assessments, which is what we do at our school.
You've got to have a really strong culture to be able to do that, to like let all of your teachers be vulnerable with each other and have those conversations. So kudos to all of you for what's going on with the staff. And that makes me think of, Tom, we take the MAP test. I don't know if you guys have that down in Arizona.
Some schools use that, but we use iReady in place of that.
So I remember when we were first introducing MAP to just to teachers, and there's so many reports you could look at. And like, it was probably before we got any training on it. I'm like clicking buttons, looking at it. I'm like, I'm lost. I don't know what any of this means. I no longer care, kind of a thing. And it made me pause as I did get training in it, and I learned how to read the different reports. I mean, we also have to be able to do that with our kids too, right? Like if they're going to take this MAP test and they're going to see a number on it that says 202, they have no idea what that means. So it goes back to the importance of, you talked about setting goals with your kids, like sitting down and having conversations with them about, hey, here's what this means. And here's what it tells me. It tells me that you're really, really good at your number sense. Like, and then you pull up some different standards to show me you're so good at this. And we could just get a little bit better at geometry. And you know what's awesome? We're going to work on geometry this year, just trying to explain that this number's not abstract and it's got a purpose to help them understand.
Absolutely. Yeah. And one of the ways that we do that too is actually through every grade level does a SMART goal for their grade level based on data. And I'm walking through and helping all of the teachers build their SMART goals. But I also build the folders I'm a big fan of screenshots because I think they're a little bit easier to interpret too, and you don't have to click around to find anything. And so I make sure that everything's at their fingertips so that they can look at that information and then make informed decisions. So that SMART goals at the beginning, middle, and end of the year is very important. But what is a SMART goal if you're not constantly talking about it and doing anything with it? And so our teachers, we're all tasked with talking to their classes about what the goal was that was for their whole class. And so they all made all of their students aware of what that goal was. And then all of the individual students created a goal, especially grades 3 through 5. And then we have data walls in the classroom. So they're able to put their goal on the wall and then be able to track the data for each individual student.
That's awesome. Making it real, authentic, visible is so powerful, right? Because I can forget about my goal, but if it's there, I can see it, I can touch it. That's awesome. Allie, it's been so good to get to know you and talk with you and experience your passion. At the end of every episode, we always ask the question, what does the world need now? In the 60s, it was love, plain and simple. There were enough mountains to climb, there were enough rivers to cross. And if you're singing it, that's awesome. But Allie, what does the world need now?
Okay, that's a heavy question. But if I were to pinpoint just 2 words, honestly, I think curiosity and compassion. Those are the 2 words that I think, and I'll tell you why, but what I think the world needs now. So for curiosity, coming from a STEM school, I think that our students need that. It fuels that innovation and the problem solving. And then compassion, we really need to be raising empathetic students and leaders and teachers and people who can not only solve problems, but solve the right problems. So I think curiosity and compassion so that we can raise a generation that is curious enough to learn and compassionate enough to care.
I love that. And when we think about things in this world that scare us, it's probably because we don't know a whole lot about it. And so the more curious we are, the more we're going to learn, the more compassion we have, the closer we come together, right? Doesn't mean we're always going to agree, but at least we've got some similarities there and some eye to eye contact that's going on. Allie, thank you so much for joining us tonight. It has been an absolute joy to learn and grow from you. We greatly appreciate it.
Thank you. I really appreciate you having me. This was not something I've been a part of before, so I really, really appreciated the opportunity.
Ladies and gentlemen, that's our show. We're so thankful and appreciative that you continue to join us on What the World Needs Now. Tom and Josh would like to thank Harmony Academy from National University for making it possible for them to share the stories of incredible educators from across the country and world. Please check out harmony-academy.org to see how Harmony Academy can support you on your journey in education.